Hey, welcome back to Just 5 Mins. Another episode, you say. Episode 151. My Little Pony. Well, not. It's My Little AI Agent. Anyway, moving on. I'm a grown man, for goodness sake. Anyway, you've got to have a little bit of humour. And it is really early morning start for me. So, but that's no excuse. So, interestingly, my previous episode, 150, was OpenClaw or NA10. And there's obviously the whole hype around OpenClaw that was going on over the last few weeks. You know, people dashing out to buy Mac Minis because that was the only machine that you could run this thing on, not. Or paying, oh, you know, I'll just go and pay $200 a year for a VPS, a virtual private server. Anyway, but not knocking it. I mean, there's some really good elements there, you know. So, like everything, you know, when you dig through the hype, there either is or isn't, you know, some nuggets of truth. And I think the guy who created, I've forgotten his name, he's an Austrian developer guy. I do apologise, but anyway, I think he's done a really good job. But the problem is that there's so many settings and so many, I mean, for someone who knows what they're doing, yeah, okay. But if you don't, you could really get yourself unstuck, you know, big time. But all of that said, the guy who created OpenClaw has been poached slightly. I'm sure he's being made an offer that he can't refuse to go to work at OpenAI. To work on personal agents there. So does that mean it's now OpenClaw or OpenAI Claw? There you go. But anyway, all of the nefarious stuff aside. But anyway, my last episode, 150, was OpenClaw, and I did have a go with it. I did have a play. I spun up a very cheap VPS to try it out, but I'll be honest, even though for me personally, and again, it's not knocking or bashing anything, it was a little bit, you know, there was lots of little settings and things like that, which is, I can understand why they're there, by the way, you know, but for me there was a bit much. And again, my go-to for this type of stuff has been NA10, because you can visually build your workflow agent stuff. You can have sub agents, you can have all sorts of stuff, but you do need a slightly beefier VM. You can run it in Docker, so all of these things are slightly irrelevant, but you do have a web interface. So if you've got it in a VPS that you want it always on, you've got to run a reasonable server, and of course you've got to then make sure that it's all locked down and secure and everything. So I came across, and I'll put this in the link, there was a lady off YouTube that decided to have a take on OpenClaw, and in fact, in fairness, she was doing something like this for a while, you know, for the last year at least, so if not a little bit longer. So it's all credit to her for the inspiration. But ultimately, what I've built is, well, I've taken the blueprint, if you like, from that, and essentially it uses Claude CLI. Okay, so first of all, that can just run on, you know, any platform, Windows, Mac, Linux, but it also can run in a way that it's always on. In other words, it doesn't run as a service per se, but you can use other sort of tools. I've got it running on a ultra small Linux server. In fact, it's on AWS Lightsail, and there's, I think, 3 months free anyway. But even when it runs out of that free period, it's only about, I think it's about $5 US a month, even less than that. And there's obviously loads of other places, so I'm not hooked on one thing. But the good thing is, overall, this VPS has no external ports open. There's no HTTP access, nothing like that. I have got it hooked up to Telegram, of course, like everybody. WhatsApp just seems, every time I try to hook up WhatsApp, I did get it working once, but it just seems to be a painful experience to set WhatsApp up as your agent interface. But Telegram is really clean, and it's made it really easy to do that. And you've got to be careful, there's caveats, but you set up your own bot in Telegram using the bot father, which is brilliant. I'm going to put together, if you want me to, let me know in the comments. Like I've said before in that previous episode, yeah, am I trying to sell something? Maybe. But do you know what? I'll put something together anyway about these components. But as it stands, the good thing is as well, it's all written in just Node.js. Well, it's actually not Node.js, but that's the more common thing that people will know. So it's essentially JavaScript at the server side. So Node.js has been around for ages and ages, years and years. Okay, in fact, the guy that created Node.js went on to create Dino. It's a clever reworking anagram of the of Node, and I like that as well. I think they've done a really good job. But I also like Bun.js, which was fairly new, and there was a lot of energy into that. And the reason, so these are all JavaScript runtime, so they run at the server. So just like Node.js, you can write JavaScript, it runs at the server. You can have then JavaScript in your browser that does all your, web front end. So it's quite good, and Dino is really good. Node.js is still very stable, been around for years. Bun, I really like, and Dino's got some of these features as well, where they've got inbuilt testing frameworks. You can compile to an exe. Oh, there's all sorts of things that you can do. But interestingly, the reason, and I always like Bun, it does seem very fast, and depending on which benchmark you look at, it looks like it's the fastest of those runtimes. But recently, quite recently, in fact, at the time of this recording, Anthropic, who make obviously Claude and Claude Code and everything, they bought Bun or took them on board or whatever. They're still going to be open source, but they're going to drive in fact, Claude Code, the CLI, is, I believe, built using Bun.js. So I've used Bun.js. So ultimately, I've got a very lightweight, there's no NA10. I do love NA10. I really do. So it's not to get around that. But it's another application to deal with. This is literally just Bun.js with JavaScript. It's using some hooks for Telegram. I've since wired it up to Twilio, if you don't know what Twilio is. Twilio, a bit of a mega communications developer platform. There's loads of stuff in there. I can't even begin to go through it. But you can use it for text messages. You can use it for voice. So it's very cheap. I mean, where I am in the UK, I think it costs something like 79 pence a month for a number. So I've got a real UK number. You can have a number in any country, well, most countries of the world. And I've even wired this up so that, yes, my agent will call me for certain things, like remember you've got, an appointment or whatever it is. It literally calls you with a really decent AI type voice. So it sounds like a real person. And it doesn't just call you with like a pre-recorded thing. You can interact. It's because ultimately all of this, the brain is using Claude Code CLI. Okay. So a little point on that. Yeah, there's a lot of people using Claude Code for this type of stuff, and they're saying, yeah, go for the $200 a month plan, which I agree. If you could go for the max plan and you've got $200 to spare, go for it. I don't. But what you can do, if you want to just test this, you can use the Anthropic Claude API. So you can put like $5 on there in credit just to test things, or you can go for whatever it is. It's like the equivalent of ChatGPT Pro, where it's you know, about $18 or something a month for the Pro. So you do have some limits on there that you've got to be aware of. But to be honest, I've been thrashing this thing with loads of just, you know, inane sort of questions and things. And it hasn't gone over anywhere near my limit for that equivalent. So it's really using Claude Code CLI. There are some scheduler components there. It's all running on Linux, this, by the way. That's why it can run on the smallest of Linux VMs to do this. But Twilio, apart from the number, there is a charge, but it's minimal stuff, you know, however many calls a month that you make. And of course, you don't have to have Twilio. Telegram is free, and what I've explained, where, you know, the agent can call you, well, it can also ping you on Telegram anyway, and you can interact with it via Telegram. I've hooked up Whisper, you know, the voice to text, so that I can, instead of typing, I can literally just either via Twilio or via Telegram, I could just talk and say, hey, what have I got on my calendar today? You know, I know that's a basic one, bear with. But that is Whisper. So it's taking your, you know, your voice to text and pushing that through Claude Code CLI ultimately. I'm using Superbase, which is a free account. And right now, again, because of the volume that I don't think I'll ever go over, the good folks at Superbase have got a really good free version. And that's using for memory. So with all of these agents, you need memory. You need to be able to say, oh, last week I had an appointment for XYZ. There's no point in it not knowing that or having to rescan or whatever. So it's using Superbase, which amongst other things, I think it's got a Postgres database underneath it. But also I'm using it for a couple of other bits in there. There's only about 3 database tables there, and they're quite lightweight. But then I plugged in Open Weather API, because I love to know about the weather, of course, being English. And that was free as well. So, you know, it's got weather notification. Not that we need it in the UK at the moment, at the time of this recording anyway. It's just like, it's okay, it's just going to keep raining, you know, so. But at some stage, but you can, obviously, because it's Open Weather API, it gives you weather for all over the world, which is quite fascinating, I think. I know I'm boring, but there you go. So what else have I got hooked up? So Twilio is an optional thing. It is quite weird though. I had it yesterday. I had an appointment, and sure enough, I got this telephone number. Obviously, that number is sort of whitelisted in a way. It's the number that you created, so you know when it gets called, it's from that. There's a whitelist process. So same of Telegram, by the way. It's all quite locked down. I'm not saying it's 1,000,000% secure, but it's more secure than maybe those other options that I've talked about. Like I said, this VPS, this little VM, running Linux, no ports open. There's no external access to it. So I just SSH into it when I need to do some code deployments and stuff like that. But then once I've broken that connection, it's completely locked, you know, locked down. So, but like I say, you could just use Telegram. So I've got Telegram working. Yeah, the Twilio is just a nice to have with a telephone number. This was more of an exercise in, can I do this with AI's help, obviously. And the next thing then is I've got it hooked up to my Google Calendar with the official Google MCP, so Model Context Protocol. They're the magic USB connectors for AI. So Claude Code CLI can use an official MCP. What my next thing is going to be using some of those Docker MCPs, where they're micro Docker containers running your MCPs, where they're very secure. So I can use other MCPs that are official, you know, and I can connect into loads of other stuff. My next one is to connect into obviously I've got a Microsoft 365 account, privately and all that sort of stuff. And again, I can use the official MCPs for all of those. So all of those connectors generally are fairly secure, fairly meaning, they are secure, but as we know, nothing really is secure. But again, I could delete that VPS in an instant if I really needed to. But yeah, it's working really well. And I think compared to things like OpenClaw and even NA10, which is, like I say, I love NA10 and I still will be using it, but it's more visual for sure, but you do have to run like a full application with a web interface and lock it down and use Cloudflare tunnels or something like that. With this, it's totally locked, so there's no external ports. So it is actually working really well as an agent platform. My day job, actually, I've got Salesforce, the tickets. And by the way, if anybody from the company is listening, I'm not going to connect into that one. I'd get shot. I'd get kicked to the curb or whatever they say. But I am actually going to try it with my own demo sandbox for Salesforce, where you can hook this up with the MCPs to say what tickets are open that are overdue by whatever. And because it's AI, you don't have to be very specific. It can look back and it's got memory, so it can say, well, you asked me about this before, haven't you done it yet? Or, there's all sorts of possibilities. You can hook into, obviously, HubSpot and all of those other things. All of these things have got MCP or even straight APIs these days. So, yeah, but as for just 5 minutes, well, it really isn't, is it? And I'm sorry it's gone on, but it's quite exciting. This is a real thing running. It's running quite well on an extremely small Linux VPS. So if you're interested, because like I said, there are some, guidelines about from a security perspective, but it's probably more secure than most other things because, like I said, it's got no external access. There's not a web interface into it or anything like that. So anyway, let me know if it's anything that people think it's useful. Because let's face it, all of this, personal assistant stuff is a bit of a novelty in a way. But once you get past that, there is some real utility there, I think. And for me personally, there is. In fact, my next little mini project is, and I know not everybody loves the Amazon Alexa stuff, whatever, flavors of ice cream all over again. But I do. I use the Amazon devices for turning lights off and on. It's not exactly, I know there's Alexa Plus coming, but it's not the brightest of AIs. But I am actually writing an AI skill to actually bolt into this environment that I've just been talking about. So I'll have Telegram, Twilio, and also Amazon Alexa to hook into this. So that's my next bit, that, to make it useful and secure, really. Just try to think that only use, official MCP servers. The Docker MCP option is really good because they're all running in little isolated mini containers anyway. And also, if you are using the official MCP connectors, then at least you've got that level of thought gone into things. So anyway, just 5 minutes has turned into nearly just 20 minutes. So that's what I've got. It's been quite an adventure. It's quite exciting, a little bit of a novelty factor for sure. But if you are interested in this or doing something like this, just let me know in the comments and we'll put something together. So anyway, that's what I've got. So wherever you are, take care. Have a good day or a good week, and I will catch you in the next one.